I told him to treat all the kids fairly. He said they're not mine and stopped responding to my texts. Can you believe that? The audacity of some men, I swear. I'm Tara, 32, and let me tell you about my situation with my ex because honestly, I'm still fuming about it. Zachary and I were high school sweethearts, like the real deal. We got together junior year when he was on the football team and I was, well, let's just say I was pretty popular. We were that couple everyone thought would make it, you know? We had our first son, Tyler, when I was barely 21. Logan came along about a year later. So there I was, 2 babies before I could even finish college. We had this whole plan mapped out. Get married after graduation, buy a cute starter home, the whole fairy tale. But life got complicated. Between the sleepless nights, trying to finish my degree part-time, and Zachary working extra shifts to keep us afloat, things got tense. And okay, I'll admit it, I messed up. There was this guy from my night class who would listen to me complain about how tired I was all the time. Justin was just supposed to be someone to talk to, but then one thing led to another. Look, I'm not proud of it, but Zachary and I were barely talking at that point. He was always working or too exhausted to pay attention to me. When Zachary found out about Justin, he completely lost it. He packed his stuff and moved out that same night. Just like that. Our 5-year relationship, done. Tyler was barely 14 months and Logan was just learning to walk. We tried mediation instead of dragging everything through court. Zachary and I agreed to split custody 50-50, 1 week with me, 1 week with him. But he made sure to remind me at every handoff that I was the one who destroyed our family. Whatever. He also insisted on paying child support for the first 1.5 years after we split, even though I told him I could manage. Looking back, I think he just wanted to make me feel like I needed him. Once I got a steady paycheck that matched his, he immediately stopped the payments, saying we should just split costs down the middle. Typical Zachary, always keeping score. The custody exchanges were always tense. He'd show up right on time, not a minute early or late, with this look on his face like I was the worst person on earth. Our conversations were strictly about the boys, and even those were clipped and cold. I tried being friendly for the kids' sake, but he kept this wall up. The boys would come home from his place talking about all the cool stuff they'd done. Camping trips, baseball games, movie nights. Meanwhile, I was working overtime just trying to keep food on the table and the lights on. About 2 years after Zachary and I split, I found out I was pregnant. Yes, with Justin's baby. The same guy. Before anyone judges me, Justin and I had actually started dating after my breakup with Zachary. It wasn't just some fling, but when I told Justin about the pregnancy, he completely freaked out and said he wasn't ready to be a father. Within a month, he was gone too. So there I was, 2 kids with Zachary, pregnant with Justin's baby, and suddenly on my own again. That's when I realized just how much I'd depended on Zachary's help with the boys. When my 3rd son, Dylan, was born, I was completely overwhelmed trying to manage 3 kids under 5 by myself. Something had to give. That's when I approached Zachary with what I thought was a reasonable solution. If he truly cared about family like he claimed, wouldn't he want to help me raise Dylan too? After all, he was already such a good father to our boys. All I was asking was that he consider legally adopting Dylan and raising him as his own alongside Tyler and Logan. It made perfect sense to me. Dylan needed a father, and Zachary was already in the picture. I still remember his face when I suggested it. He looked at me like I had completely lost my mind. "You want me to adopt the child you had with the guy you cheated on me with?" Those were his exact words. Like he needed to spell it out that way, making me sound terrible. He could have just said no without being so dramatic about it. It's not like I was asking him to get back together with me or anything. This was about the children, not us. After that awkward conversation, things got even more strained between us. Zachary became even more rigid about scheduling and would barely look at me during exchanges. Meanwhile, I was struggling financially with 3 kids and only 1 income. I tried dating again, hoping to find someone who could help share the load. That's when I met Scott. Scott seemed perfect at first. Steady job, his own place, good with kids. He was great with Tyler and Logan when they were with me, and he even made an effort with Dylan. We moved in together after only 4 months. Looking back, maybe that was rushing things, but I needed the help, and the boys needed a male figure in their lives. I thought we were building something real. 8 months into our relationship, I got pregnant again. I was excited. Finally, a complete family unit. But 3 months into my pregnancy, Scott started getting distant. He'd work late, go out with the guys more often, and barely help with the kids. When I confronted him, he admitted he wasn't ready for the responsibility of 4 children. By the time my daughter Paige was born, Scott was already living with some woman he met at his workplace. Just like that, I was alone again with now 4 kids from 3 different fathers. The whole situation was beyond stressful. I was working myself to the bone, juggling childcare for 4 kids of different ages, and trying to keep my sanity. Meanwhile, Zachary was thriving in his career, taking the boys on fun outings during his weeks with them, and had even started dating again. It just wasn't fair. He had the easy part, 2 kids, part-time with his stable income. I had 4 kids full-time with much less money to spread around. That's when I met Nathan at a support group for single parents. He seemed different, more mature, more established, and genuinely kind. He had no children of his own, but said he'd always wanted a family. We dated for a year before moving in together, and 6 months after that, we got married. Finally, some stability. Nathan was good to Tyler and Logan when they were with us, and he embraced Dylan and Paige as his own. When we found out I was pregnant with Samuel, our first child together, I thought my life was finally on the right track. But things weren't as perfect as they seemed. Nathan worked long hours to support our growing household, and while he was good with the kids, I could tell he was getting overwhelmed by the chaos of our blended family. Tyler and Logan continued their weekly rotation with Zachary, but I noticed they'd come back from his place talking about all the fun things they did. Trips to amusement parks, camping weekends, sports games. Things I could never afford to do with Dylan, Paige, and baby Samuel. The more I thought about it, the more unfair it seemed. Why should Tyler and Logan get these amazing experiences while my other children missed out? It wasn't their fault they had different fathers. They deserved the same opportunities and experiences. That's when I started to consider a solution that made perfect sense to me. Zachary should include all my children in the activities he planned with Tyler and Logan. The first time I suggested it, during a custody exchange, Zachary laughed like I'd told a joke. When he realized I was serious, his expression changed to something between disbelief and irritation. "You can't be serious," he said. "I'm not responsible for your other kids, Tara. That's on you and their fathers." His response was so cold, so uncaring. Didn't he understand that Dylan, Paige, and Samuel were Tyler and Logan's siblings? Didn't he care that half-siblings should bond and have shared experiences? More importantly, didn't he see how his privileged position, having only 2 children to care for part-time while maintaining his career, gave him advantages that neither I nor my younger children had? I tried reasoning with him. "The boys talk about these amazing weekends with you. It breaks my heart that their siblings can't experience the same things. It's creating a divide in my household." But Zachary remained unmoved. He said he was sorry the situation was difficult, but it wasn't his problem to solve. Even Nathan, my own husband, wasn't fully on my side. He agreed that it would be nice if Zachary occasionally included Dylan in outings, but he thought asking for all 3 of my other children to be included was a bit much. Nathan's reluctance to stand up for our family unit frustrated me. He kept saying things like, "Zachary's only obligated to care for his biological children," and "You can't expect him to take on financial responsibility for kids that aren't his." Even worse, Nathan admitted he wasn't particularly invested in Tyler and Logan's lives either. That realization was a blow. Here I was, trying to create one cohesive family where all 5 children were treated equally, and both fathers in the picture were drawing lines in the sand about which kids were theirs and which weren't. It was so selfish. Children shouldn't have to suffer because of adult complications. So I took matters into my own hands. I started quizzing Tyler and Logan about their weekends with Zachary, where they went, what they did, how much fun they had. I'd use this information to time my requests strategically. If I knew Zachary was planning a trip to the water park, I'd text him asking if he could please take Dylan along. "He's been talking about water slides for weeks," I'd say, laying on the guilt. When he refused, I'd text again about how disappointed Dylan was, how he cried when his brothers left without him. Sometimes I'd even stage these conversations when I knew Zachary was picking up the boys, making sure Dylan was asking, "Can I come too?" The look on Zachary's face, that mix of guilt and annoyance, gave me some satisfaction. He'd have to say no directly to Dylan's face, making him the bad guy, not me. But Zachary rarely budged. In fact, my persistence seemed to make him even more determined to maintain his boundaries. He started communicating with me exclusively through a co-parenting app, limiting our interactions to logistical matters only. When I'd bring up including my other children in texts, he'd simply not respond. As summer approached, tensions escalated. Summer meant Zachary would have the boys for extended periods, taking them on camping trips and to amusement parks. Meanwhile, my other 3 kids would be stuck at home because Nathan and I couldn't afford similar experiences for 5 children. The inequality of it all made my blood boil. Dylan's birthday was coming up in July, and I knew I couldn't give him the celebration he deserved. I dropped hints to Zachary at it during exchanges, mentioning how Dylan was turning 8 and how he'd never had a proper birthday party. I suggested that since Zachary was taking Tyler and Logan to the local amusement park that weekend, it would be the perfect opportunity to include Dylan and make his birthday special. "That's not my responsibility, Tara," was all Zachary said before walking away. I was fuming. How could he be so cold? It was just one day, one small gesture, that would mean the world to an 8-year-old boy. The weekend of Dylan's birthday arrived. I cobbled together a small celebration at home, a grocery store cake, a few modest gifts, and a movie night. Dylan tried to act excited, but I could see the disappointment in his eyes when Tyler and Logan packed their overnight bags for their weekend with Zachary. They were talking non-stop about the roller coasters and games at the amusement park they would visit. As I waved goodbye to my 2 oldest sons, watching them climb into Zachary's car with their backpacks and sleeping bags, I felt a surge of resentment. It wasn't fair. Not to me, not to Dylan, not to any of my younger children who never got these kinds of experiences. I spent the weekend trying to make Dylan's birthday special with what little resources we had, but I knew it paled in comparison to what his brothers were experiencing. When Tyler and Logan returned on Sunday evening, they couldn't stop talking about the amusement park. The roller coasters they rode, the games they played, the cotton candy and funnel cakes they ate. Dylan sat at the kitchen table, listening with wide eyes, occasionally asking questions about rides he'd seen in commercials, but never experienced himself. The contrast was heartbreaking. That night, after all the kids were asleep, I sent Zachary a long text. I told him how selfish and cruel it was to take Tyler and Logan to an amusement park on Dylan's birthday weekend. I accused him of deliberately excluding Dylan, of creating division between siblings, of failing as a role model. A real man, I wrote, would step up for all these children, not just the ones that share his DNA. I called him selfish, heartless, and worse. I expected him to defend himself, to argue back as he usually did. Instead, all I got was a short reply. "They're not mine, Tara. Not my responsibility. I've been clear about this for years." That response pushed me over the edge. I fired back with an even angrier text, telling him he was teaching our sons to be as cold and uncaring as he was. I reminded him that these were their half-siblings he was rejecting, and one day Tyler and Logan would resent him for creating this division in their family. I demanded that he start including all my children in his plans, or I would consider limiting his access to the boys. That's when Zachary stopped responding altogether. Complete silence. He didn't reply to any more of my texts that night, or the next day, or the day after that. When it was time for the next custody exchange, he showed up exactly on time as usual, but he didn't say a word to me. He hugged the boys, helped them with their bags, and left without a single glance in my direction. For the next few weeks, any communication about the boys came through the co-parenting app in the form of brief, factual updates. No response to my continued arguments about including my other children, no acknowledgement of my threats or complaints. It was like talking to a wall. Meanwhile, Nathan was becoming increasingly frustrated with my fixation on what Zachary was or wasn't doing for my other children. "You need to accept that Zachary is only responsible for Tyler and Logan," he said during one particularly heated discussion, "and maybe focus more on what we can do for our family instead of what he should be doing." But Nathan didn't understand. It wasn't just about the fun outings or the financial aspects. It was about equality, about creating one cohesive family unit where all siblings were treated the same. Why couldn't anyone see how important that was? I started to notice other shifts in our household. Tyler and Logan began asking to spend more time at Zachary's place. They'd call him on their designated phone time when they were with me, whispering into the receiver and going quiet whenever I entered the room. Nathan was spending more time at work, coming home later and later, claiming he needed the overtime to cover our expenses. Even Dylan started asking uncomfortable questions. Why doesn't Logan and Tyler's dad like me? And why can't I go with them to fun places? I didn't know how to answer without making Zachary the villain, which I realized wasn't entirely fair, even in my frustrated state. After all, these were choices made by adults long before Dylan was born. But still, why should a child suffer because of those choices? The situation came to a head when the school year started. Tyler came home with a permission slip for a father-son camping trip organized by his school. I immediately texted Zachary, telling him it was scheduled during my custody week, but he should take Tyler. Then I added that Dylan had received the same form. He was now in the same school. And wouldn't it be nice if Zachary took both boys? 3 days passed with no response from Zachary. Finally, I called him, something I rarely did anymore given our strained communication. To my surprise, he answered. "Did you get my text about the camping trip?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. "Yes," he replied. "I'll take Tyler." "And what about Dylan? He really wants to go too." There was a long pause before Zachary spoke again. "Tara, I've been patient for years with your requests, but it needs to stop. I am Tyler and Logan's father. I am not Dylan's father, or Paige's, or Samuel's. I have never agreed to take on that role, no matter how many times you've asked." His bluntness stunned me into silence, but he continued. "I understand you're in a difficult situation. But you made choices that led to this. So did the fathers of your other children. Those choices have consequences, and pushing those consequences onto me isn't fair or reasonable." I found my voice then, anger rising. "So you're saying my younger children deserve less because their fathers aren't in the picture? How is that their fault?" "It's not their fault," Zachary replied, his voice calm but firm. "But it's not mine either. I have my own obligations, to Tyler and Logan, to my job, to building my own life. I cannot be the solution to problems I didn't create." Before I could respond, he added, "I'm taking Tyler on the camping trip. If you try to manipulate this situation or make him feel guilty about going without Dylan, we're going to have a much bigger conversation about our custody arrangement." The implied threat was clear. If I pushed too hard, Zachary might seek legal changes to our current arrangement. Given his stability and my increasingly chaotic household, I wasn't sure a judge would side with me. I ended the call feeling defeated and angry. Why couldn't Zachary understand? Why couldn't he just help out occasionally? It wasn't like I was asking him to raise my other children full-time or pay for their expenses. Just include them sometimes so they didn't feel left out. Was that really too much to ask? That night, I ranted to Nathan about the conversation, expecting sympathy and support. Instead, he sighed heavily and said something that stopped me in my tracks. "Tara, he's right. You can't keep expecting Zachary to solve problems he didn't create. And frankly, I'm getting tired of hearing about what Zachary should or shouldn't be doing for kids that aren't his, when I'm here every day trying to help with all 5 children." His words hit me like a slap. I hadn't realized how my fixation on getting Zachary to help with my younger children was affecting my relationship with Nathan. But still, I couldn't let it go. There had to be a way to make things equal for all my children. As the weeks passed, the divide in our blended family became more apparent. Tyler and Logan continued to enjoy their time with Zachary, coming home with stories of adventures and outings that made Dylan, Paige, and Samuel envious. Nathan became more distant, working late and spending weekends on projects that kept him away from home. And I grew increasingly resentful of Zachary's refusal to help ease the inequality in my children's experiences. I made one final attempt to reason with Zachary. I sent him a long email detailing the emotional impact on Dylan especially, who idolized his older brothers and couldn't understand why he was excluded from their activities with their father. I appealed to Zachary's sense of compassion, his role as a man in these children's lives, his influence on how Tyler and Logan would view family relationships in the future. His response was brief and final. I understand this is difficult, but my answer remains the same. I am responsible for Tyler and Logan. You and the other fathers are responsible for your other children. Please respect this boundary. And that was it. No more discussion, no compromise, no consideration for what I was dealing with as a mother trying to manage 5 children from 4 different fathers. Just a cold, hard boundary that left me and my younger children on our own. The most difficult part was explaining to Dylan why he couldn't join his brothers. How do you tell an 8-year-old that the man who takes his brothers on adventures doesn't want him along because they don't share DNA? How do you explain adult choices and consequences to a child who just wants to be included? As I tucked Dylan into bed after another weekend where Tyler and Logan were with Zachary, he asked in a small voice, "Does Logan and Tyler's dad hate me?" The question broke my heart. "No, sweetie," I said, smoothing his hair. "He doesn't hate you. It's just complicated grown-up stuff." Dylan frowned, his young face serious. "But we're all brothers. Why can't we do the same things?" I had no good answer for him, no explanation that wouldn't place blame or create more division. So I just hugged him tight and promised we'd do something special, just the 2 of us next weekend. But I knew it wouldn't be the same. It wouldn't be the amusement park or the camping trip or the baseball game. It would be something smaller, something within my limited budget. Something that would pale in comparison to the experiences his brothers were having. And in that moment, though I'd never admit it aloud, a tiny voice inside me wondered if maybe, just maybe, Zachary had a point. Maybe the consequences of my choices couldn't be shifted onto someone else's shoulders, no matter how unfair it seemed. Maybe the real problem wasn't Zachary's refusal to help, but the situation I'd created through my own decisions. But that thought was too painful, too heavy with implications about my own responsibility in this mess. So I pushed it away and focused instead on my righteous anger at Zachary's selfishness, at his inability to see beyond biology to the needs of innocent children. It was easier that way. Easier to blame him than to face the possibility that I had created this inequality myself. As I left Dylan's room, my phone pinged with a text from Nathan. "Working late again. Don't wait up." Another night alone with the kids. Another reminder of how everything had fallen apart. Tyler and Logan would be home from Zachary's tomorrow. They'd bring more stories, more evidence of the divide in my children's experiences. And the cycle would continue, with no resolution in sight. Just the harsh reality that some choices can't be undone, and some consequences can't be shifted elsewhere, no matter how much I wish they could be.